What's up and welcome to Gift Makumbi BA channel. Today we are going to talk about earn $500 with Google Maps. Available worldwide. Make money online. Google Maps has dominated the online mapping business for more than a decade. Service was launched in February 2005 and quickly became the most prominent mapping service. Everybody somehow got used to the fact that it is excellent, detailed, free, and mostly without ads. Well, Google decided that it's time to change that and start making serious money from Google Maps. How is Google exactly making money from Google Maps and how much? Google Maps makes money through two primary ways of revenue sources. Number one, local ads. Ads at the top of local businesses listing and custom branded map pins worth $3.5 billion a year. Number two, Google Maps API and partnerships. Google Maps offers Maps API for free for other app developers and businesses, e.g. Uber and Lyft, that earns $0.8 billion per year. Google does not disclose details about Google Maps revenue, and the numbers I showed you above are only estimates. Google does not disclose details about Google Maps revenue, and the numbers I showed you above are only estimates. In the rest of the article, I will give you a more detailed insight into where is this revenue coming from, how I estimated, and why it will probably continue to grow strongly in the coming years. What Google Maps service offers, quick overview. Before we get into how Google Maps makes money, let me quickly remind you of a scale of functionalities that Google Maps currently offer to its users and business, because Google added a lot of new features stuff lately. What you can use Google Maps for: number one, search local places and business listings, restaurants, shops, dentists, car repair shops, etc. Google Maps listing also shows up in the standard Google search results for local searches. Number two, use it as a normal map and explore it in a standard or satellite view. Number three, 360 degrees panoramic street view. You can sometimes go even inside buildings. Number four, use route planning and navigation to get where you need. Number four, use route planning and navigation to get where you need with community-driven data on crashes, speed traps, and traffic slowdowns. Number five, one of the new features is the live view navigation using augmented reality. Number six, business can add their locations to Google Maps through the Google My Business service. What can you use Google Maps API for? Number one, create your custom maps, adjust it to your needs, and embed it on your web page and application. Number two, visualize data as an overlay on the top of Google Maps. Number three, use Google Maps in the back end of your application or service like ride sharing, gaming, or asset tracking. For example, Uber's app uses the Google Maps API. How much money Google Maps makes and why it will increase. Google Maps does not disclose detail about how much money Google Maps makes. One of the few numbers that Google Maps discloses is the number of users active each month, which is 1 billion, and puts Google Maps far ahead of its competitors, both worldwide and also in the United States. Google Maps had 154 million in the US, which is a 6 times more than its closest competitor. So how much is Google Maps revenue? Here is an infographic explaining how Google Maps earns approximately $4.3 billion revenue a year, based on the rough estimates for the year. It consists of $3.5 billion of revenue from advertising and $0.8 billion in revenue from Google Maps API. If you are interested in how I exactly arrived at these numbers, I will explain it in this article. I also looked around the estimates of some of the other analysts, and the other being repeated over and over again in many articles was an estimate of Brian Nowak and Morgan Stanley is slightly higher, assuming $3 billion. For a long time, Google did not monetize its apps through ads, and also its Google API access was cheaper and mostly free for a small fee of the site. It changed recently. Google is starting to push ads in the Google Maps to drive revenue. However, they are doing it slowly to see how will the users react. Service is still heavily under monetized. We are pretty carefully about not being very aggressive about how we present these ads to users, because we don't want users to feel like we are overloading the experience. Rajas Munka, director of the product managed for Google Maps, as reported by Bloomberg. They also managed their separate mapping API into the Google Map platform and significantly increased its pricing and limited free access to the API. Google also publicly announced this push, so their actions are in line with what Google is saying. That means that Google Maps revenue can increase significantly in just a few years. And since the cost of this service already exists, any revenue increase will mean an incremental increase in net income before tax. That is why it is such a significant opportunity for Google / Alphabet, and why revenue from Google Maps can double in a few years. What would mean revenue of $8 billion or even more a year, according to my estimates. How Google Maps makes money from ads. Let's look at different ways Google can earn money through ads in Google Maps. 3.5 billion estimates in 2019. How it exactly works. Local search ads within Google Maps. Google Maps allows you to do a local search. You can zoom in on a city or specific city area and search for restaurants, hotels, dentists, shops, or any other businesses. A list of these businesses will show up and you can scroll through them. Advertising works the same as in standard Google search. The paid listings will show at the top. For advertisers, there is not some unique way how to advertise only in Google Maps. Service is part of the local search advertising. To be able to advertise in Google Maps search, the business has to have its Google My Business profile and enable location extension in Google Ads. Advertising will pay only if their ad gets clicked on, similar to standard Google ads. Custom branded map pins. Another way how Google is monetizing Google Maps through ad revenue by offering businesses custom branded pins that will feature a business logo. These pins show up right on the map. Even if you're not looking for a specific business, you can see an example of Walgreens in San Francisco. This feature is, of course, a paid feature, and you have to meet some minimum spend, a minimum number of locations to use it. Using retail locations as a landmark in navigation. Many users are reported see example of tweets below, and that they were using Google Maps for navigation. They noticed that Google started to use local businesses locations as navigation points. So people were given directions like turn right at the Starbucks or turn right after Burger King. Some of the users that used them, not so much. Google Maps just told me to turn right after the Burger King. is that new advertising income stream. Google, was reported by Bloomberg, denies that this is a paid service, and they said that they use it because it is a better landmark and it results in a better user experience. Well, it might be true that Google customers do not pay for it directly, but since so far it was mostly bigger companies which were mentioned as their landmark, this looks more like some pack for bigger Google Ads buyers. I guess it should be possible to evaluate it after a few years and do some analysis if there is